All right, we'll call this meeting to order at 1 o'clock, February 2nd, regular meeting. Could we have Father Horning, Ed Horning, from St. Mary's Catholic Church? If you can lead us after the invocation in the pledge as well. Thank you.
Let us pray. Lord God, at the dawn of creation, your Spirit hovered over the waters. Water is your welcome gift to us. We need it in order to live, and your Holy Spirit is the source of all power. We pray to you on behalf of our county, of our nation, state, and community. Send forth your Spirit. Things are created and maintained in existence. We shall be recreated by you, and you renew constantly the face of the earth. God, by the light of the Holy Spirit, you do instruct us and teach us. Grant that in the Holy Spirit we may be truly wise, and we might rejoice in your holy presence. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this is a public meeting. Now is the time for public comments. Please state your name and address that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of IID, but not an item on the agenda. If there are no public comments, do we have anything to report out of closed session?
No, Mr. President.
Then I'll move to the comments from the board members. Director Mendoza.
Yes, I just like to offer a moment of silence on the death of Cliff Hurley. Cliff, I feel, was a very strong friend of the IID. Even in his criticisms, he always was there to make us stronger. And he died last Tuesday of a massive heart attack, and he will be missed. And I considered him my good friend. So please join me in a moment of silence for Cliff. Thank you.
Director Abadi.
No comment.
Director Menville.
Yes, I also want to say it's an unfortunate passing for Cliff Hurley, and I know it was pretty sudden. As Dr. Mendoza said, he had a massive heart attack on Tuesday, and then also we lost Wayne Vandergraff, who was a supervisor from Calexico and served Calexico well during his time on the Carroll County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Director Hinks.
Yeah, I'd like to just make a couple of comments. The article on the first line responders having to do with our troubleshooters and our linemen. I would ask that management take a good look at that. Understand that because of some maybe labor requirements or whatever, the trucks from the some of these first line responders, you're looking at changing that, and in this local community, it's very important. There's times that lines have to be severed on houses that are on fire, or if a power pole falls on a car or something. And because of our remoteness and outlying areas, that time frame is very important, and I'd ask that take a look at that and review that. Also, the internal auditors have presented us with a draft policy on whistleblower policy, and also how we implement our internal audits, and I would ask that they bring that forward for the next informational meeting for discussion. Thank you.
Well, Cliff was a staunch defender of government of, by, and for the people. So I would like to ask that we have a proclamation be prepared to honor Mr. Hurley at a future IID board meeting.
Will do.
Moving on to, do we have any comments from our general manager?
Just one, Mr. President, members.
Mr. Jane and I were back in Washington the middle part of last week, briefing our delegation and on a number of subjects, QSA, of course, and a couple items, one on Hoover, which I think is item number 11, and a piece of proposed legislation that Senator Feinstein is sponsoring, and again, I think that's number 12, which Mr. Ajane will be talking about.
Mr. Garber?
No comments, sir.
We're moving on to information agenda. Number 1, review funding requests by the County of Imperial for Keystone Planning Area Project.
Yes, Mr. President, members, we have the esteemed Mr. Huberger here to make a presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the Board of Directors of the IID. I'm Eric Huberger, Planning and Development Services Director for the County of Imperial, as you know. It's nice to see you again this new year. As Dr. Brady has indicated, we're here as a follow-up. I believe in December, Grady Dutton presented to you an overview of the plan for the Keystone Planning Project as a result of your earlier request for the county to put together a plan on how we were going to move forward with this project. And during that presentation, I believe he went through a list of items that we feel, and having worked with your staff, Dr. Brady and some of your other staff, needs to be done over the next several years in order to make this project a success. I want to reiterate, this project basically is unique in a lot of ways, and probably the most unique thing about it is it's the first time that I recall, and I think it is the first time that we actually have 4 agencies that have agreed to be partners in trying to move this forward, and that's, of course, the IID, the City of Brawley, the City of Imperial, and, of course, the county, and I believe Marlene Best from the City of Imperial is here also. It's an opportunity that we have to develop an area of the county that is not well suited for a lot of things, particularly farming, so we're not really trying to do a development that a lot of times we get criticized for when we start to do developments in the county because it takes out ag land. In this case, we're taking some of the least usable land. Your prior board, some of you were on the board, I think, but prior board supported us in doing the specific plan for the Keystone area. We had some issues getting that done, but with your help, we got that done. We did an environmental impact report. And so we basically have the planning in place, and now, of course, we need to move on with trying to get the rest of the dominoes in place to make this a possibility for development. And I would reiterate, this is a project that is intended to create jobs, and not jobs in competition with ag, but jobs for diverse opportunities so that we have other businesses located here in the county. I presented a letter, and I believe it's in your package, to your board and to Dr. Brady. From the items that Grady Dutton presented to you in December, and again in concert with meetings we had not just with your general manager and staff, but we also briefly discussed that at the IID/county board committees. We've come up with 6 items that we feel we can move forward with that are mutually beneficial to all the parties. And in particular, also beneficial to the IID, because some of the items that are listed are actually things that your staff requested be done, and things that you as a district either need or want to do anyway, regardless of whether this project is moving forward. Item number 1 would be the IID Drainage Master Study, and this would allow your staff to move forward in concert with the county and other agencies to do the base flow analysis for the area. And I'll just highlight these. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. The second one would be the wastewater treatment plant. Again, this would allow the City of Imperial to move forward. And as you, I think, have been told in the past, the City of Imperial has already spent probably close to $1.5 million on designing and getting the wastewater treatment plant ready for construction. So this is simply another step to get the infrastructure and the substation that we've talked about, the IID substation, the power substation, a reality. And again, I want to compliment the IID staff Because when we started off 3 or 4 years ago, I remember very vividly, Marlene and I met with some of your staff, and the first thing we learned is we'd have to come up with $8 million for a substation. Working with Mr. Jillian and his staff, we've now been able to bring that down to a more manageable way of doing things. So that's a great opportunity, and we compliment your staff for that assistance. Number 3, the IID Energy Overall System Analysis. Again, I believe this is something that your staff came up with in working with Grady to move that along. Then item number 4 would be IID right-of-way analysis. Again, something that is crucial to your operations. To do the overall keystone management, we're requesting that we look at somehow doing a management structure, because neither the county nor the IID have extra staff around to kind of manage this whole project. And then last, to do the transportation corridor alignment study. And as you recall, in the county's general plan adopted back in '93 and updated since then about 3 times, Dogwood Road is designated as a major north-south road, basically, or highway, if you will. It's actually designed in our general plan to be a 6-lane north-south corridor with 2 additional lanes for a mass transit. And that is to complement, not supersede or anything, but complement Highway 111. Because eventually Highway 111 is planned to be a freeway. And so one of the things we want to do in our circulation element is make sure we had alternative routes and again, routes that we can start working towards mass transit systems. And so Dogwood Road is designed to be that. The problem with Dogwood Road, as you all know, is you have a lot of infrastructure on certain parts of Dogwood Road. So we can't just take the center line of the current Dogwood Road and say we're going to expand it on either side by 50 or 100 feet, because we'd have to take down major transmission lines, underground numerous canals, things like that. So what we want to do is analyze what is the best alignment for Dogwood Road. And the purpose of that is so we can protect that right away for future development. The last thing we need to do is have development go right up to where the future alignment's going to be, and then have to purchase expensive real estate to make the road happen, which is what has happened in a lot of other areas. So basically, those are the 6 items we feel we can move forward with right now. We've put an approximate price tag on it, and I believe Dr. Brady in his reports indicated it's about $650,000. If you'll recall, the discussion originally was that the IID would put up $750,000 for a period of 10 years. We're not asking for $750,000 for 10 years. We're asking for your assistance for the first year. And I would also add that even if we started today with these things, they probably would take more than a year to get done. So we, again, wouldn't foresee spending the whole $650,000 in this first fiscal year. Essentially, that's our report. As I said, I did meet with Dr. Brady about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, at the request of 2 of your board members. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Mr. President, may I make some comments? Well, Mr. Huberger, you're still as cute as the last time you were here.
You know, I was waiting for that. Thank you.
You're still cute. However, in your statements, you said we're 4 agencies working together: the IID, the county, Imperial, and Brawley. And partners do not sue one another. And the monies for this project are going to come from the QSA. And as you know, right now we're in court, and Imperial County is one of the plaintiffs that is suing the district. And without the QSA, there'll be no money for this project. So I am imploring you to please talk to your Board of Supervisors, ask them to drop the lawsuits, because I, as one board member on this board, will not vote yes to allocate that money. We serve the same people, the same constituents, and to have the county sue the district, force us to spend millions of dollars defending our water rights, defending the district, it's unthinkable. So as cute as you are, and as much as I like you, I'm going to say no. That's it, Mr. Sanchez.
Anybody else?
I've got a couple of questions. On the local entity funds, I'll address this to the general manager. We have a 2/3, 1/3 split. Where would this be coming from, these funds?
It would come from the competitive side, if it came. there'd have to be a determination made that this is a form of socioeconomic mitigation resulting from fallowing, and that this would be adequate. Of course, you're the local entity, so that would be your determination, but I think staff's recommendation would be that it would come from the competitive side.
Okay, so we're looking at, we're 3 years behind in the distribution of the competitive side. We also have the issue of the court litigation of, not litigation, the court decision. What happens down the road? We're still waiting on that final determination. So what I'm asking, if the QSA blows up, goes away, would this 650,000 be put to good use? I mean, would the project be able to continue with other funding? Is this kind of foundation work, or because right now it's probably premature for us to go ahead and move towards the full 7.5 million.
If you want, if I can respond to some of that, Mr. Hanks, I'd be happy to. Yeah, in effect, we are looking this as basically a foundation or a starting point. We are working with other entities for funding. We're looking at private developers that are in that area that are moving forward. We just finished one EIR for the Rancho Los Lagos project, which is just immediately south and contiguous to the city of Brawley. They would be expected to contribute to this infrastructure and some of the engineering and design. Brookfield 101 or whatever other names they've gone by, which is the land that you actually sold as part of your land acquisition release. That's moving forward. That EIR should be coming out. There are some other developments that we're working with. So this would be a number of participants.
Okay.
I understand your concern over the long term, and as I mentioned earlier, we're not saying commit the 7.5 million if you don't have it, obviously. What we're saying is we need to get started. To us, and I think to you folks, this is an opportunity for the county as a whole, and I'll get back to your comments, Ms. Mendoza, a little bit later, to move forward with a project that has a potential for creating a lot of jobs.
Okay. On our policy, on the competitive side, Mr. Garber, if this moves forward, we'll need to make sure this fits within those guidelines for consideration.
Yeah, we would have to, I think you would want your staff to look at it first and your local entity consultants, and then the board would want to discuss that. I don't know how you'd fit this into the competitive RFP, but I think that's something you could do if you made the decision you want to do it. I will point out that in the county's complaint in the QSA, they do specifically challenge the socioeconomic mitigation process as inappropriate. So I would expect that that claim would be resolved in order for us to give them money under that process, or it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we probably need to have a discussion with legal on some of these issues. See how it's tied in, or I'm kind of anxious to hear you address Director Mendoza's comments.
So am I.
Okay, so I'll shut up and let you address it. Oh, there was one other item. On item number 6, on Dogwood Corridor, it says from the Mexican border to Calipatria. Should that not read Brawley?
Well, actually, we're looking beyond Brawley. We're trying to make a north-south corridor. And a couple of years ago, we were told that it would have to stop at Keystone because Brawley wouldn't let us go through Brawley with a 4-lane road. But I'm hopeful that we can overcome that.
But you're not going right through the plaza, are you? 'Cause that's where Dogwood heads.
No, well, that's why I said we need to look at the alignment. It may have to go around, obviously.
No, through Director Mendoza's house.
That's cool.
You're really putting me in a position of taking...
Take out the Stockman's Club, do they?
That's why we're suggesting we
Okay,
study
well,
this.
I was just curious because it said Calipatria,
Right.
and I know that Dogwood doesn't extend to Calipatria, so I was,
Right.
not that I would be opposed to development up in that direction. Okay, all right, thank you.
Are there any questions from the directors?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. I know that Mr. Schubert has been working on this keystone project for many, many years, and the county put together a specific planning area years ago, and I think it is a good area because it will bring industry and commerce and jobs to an area that supports Raleigh and Imperial, and even El Centro will get benefit out of it. And so I know that I've been to some of the meetings where some of the landowners, the city of Raleigh, city of Imperial, and the county have all been involved, and IID people have been there also. So overall, I think this is an excellent project for the area. I have some of the same concerns that Director Mendoza has, you know, with the QSA. I know right now, I think on the competitive side, for the years 05, 06, and 06, 07, and 07, 08, there's about $1.7 million sitting there that is available from the competitive side. And so there are some funds available at least to do what Mr. Huber is talking about here if the board so chose to move in that direction. But I've got some concerns. I think this is an excellent project. I think we have to see how a few things shake out on the QSA, and then the board has to have some discussions amongst itself on how to handle this situation. But overall, I favor the project, but I've got some concerns, as I said, lawsuit, QSA, and et cetera, that will weigh in on some of the thinking on this.
Any other comments?
I've got one more comment. In our resolution on the appeal, there was a provision in there included for the IID to meet with the county to discuss some of the issues. And hopefully we could maybe get to the bottom of what each side needs to move forward as one group, because I think it's going to be important down the road that we move forward as one group. So like get all those things aired out.
Orby?
I have one question here. There's one thing mentioned here, the local entity, which involves some of us as a farm service provider and also the competitive part. It mentions that it would be in annual increments of $750,000. That would carry it past 2017, which the Fourth Amendment that has to do and brought the local entity into existence. Is this another situation to where that the IID at this time, if they accept this, and I'm saying if you accept it, I'm not talking about the merits or whatever of this program. I'm talking about the QSA. If it is to extend beyond 2017 by at least 2, maybe 3 years, does that mean that the following program, as we now know it, that the IID will continue with that? It'd be $1.5 million, possibly $1.1 million that these people have asked for that would be hanging after 2017. Now, I'm asking the board, not Hugh Berger. I hope I make myself clear here. Am I correct in saying that the local entity comes to an end at 2017?
The local entity exists to mitigate the socioeconomic impacts of fallowing to the extent that fallowing is done for purposes of creating transfer water or environmental mitigation water. When that stops, there's no purpose of a local entity. There are currently funds, and the original QSA provides that that activity should go on for 15 years. That activity has gone on for, is it 8 years now? That's the way it is. The source of funding that Mr. Huberger is referring to is funding that would come from that program. If that program doesn't exist, if there's no fallowing, then there's no funding. It's an interesting question because we already have the funds because we settled with San Diego what we would do with those funds, and I don't know the answer as I sit here.
Yeah, well, theoretically, right now, we have about $40 million left in
Right.
this
Now,
program.
I will note that
committed.
a lot of those funds are future payments that San Diego is going to make. I would suspect that if the QSA no longer moves forward, there's no more fallowing, they're not going to make those payments.
Okay, well, if it does continue, and this program is continued for the $7.5 million, then that will leave approximately $6.1 million for the competitive program. That puts it even less than $1 million with 8 years left. So that's my question is whether those things have been taken into consideration. And of course, we don't know what will happen and whatever. According to the bureaucracy within the IID and the local press, it's a slam dunk that we're going to come out all right. So with that, I'll sit down and ask my other questions at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Orby. Marlene, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Marlene Best with the City of Imperial. I'm here just to add some information, as this is an information item for you today. A quick update may be appropriate as to the status of the planning process that the City of Imperial is in for the wastewater treatment facility. The Keystone Regional Wastewater Reclamation Facility is moving forward. We are in negotiations with a property owner currently at this point in time. The plant is 100% designed. The environmental is currently in process based upon the negotiation parcel that we're working on, and will be out for public review very quickly. We are very hopeful of getting some additional involvement with the IID relative to your integrated regional water master planning process, and we hope to be a part of that long process that you will be going through and being supportive of that. The city is very interested in wanting to provide an opportunity to regionalize our wastewater treatment and water reclamation opportunities and generate recycled water that meets Title 22, which would be a very positive move for this valley. And so I just wanted to give you an update on that, as this is an information item and somewhat related to the topic at hand.
Mr. Sanchez, could I, Ms. Best?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give me an update on the LAFCO status of the 80 acres on East Barione that we're hoping to annex to build our new admin building that's been dragging? Who's
Yes,
in charge
ma'am.
of LAFCO in Imperial County? Oh, the cute dude over there.
I think
cute
LAFCO
dude
is in
over
charge
there.
of LAFCO. But I expected that, and I'm very happy to tell you that it is moving forward. The
At a snail's
annexation,
pace?
the annexation is due to go before our Planning Commission in the month of February and before our City Council in the month of March, and then it goes to LAFCO the month after that.
It hasn't gone to LAFCO yet?
It's all of the work is being done in cooperation between the two staffs. That's the way the process works, is LAFCO and the city work cooperatively with IID staff on that annexation. So that is moving forward, and we
So,
expect a
When
very
we
positive
first
move.
started talking about annexing those 80 acres, it's been how long? A year, maybe?
About a year. It takes about 18 months to get through the full process.
Okay.
So I'm happy to tell you it's very near the end at this point.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
That is very good for both of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Eric, did you have a question or comment?
Just address the LAFCO issue while we're at it. Wearing my separate other hat, Executive Officer of LAFCO, not speaking for the county. The process, Ms. Mendoza, is basically this. The city has to do its land use entitlement approvals first before LAFCO can even consider the application. So until they go through the CEQA process, the zone changes, whatever else they're doing, there's nothing that we can even consider at LAFCO. So basically, as Marlene said, it's a parallel process, but it's still kind of a 1-2 step where they have to do the first part. When that's certified, then they can submit it to LAFCO, then we can process it. Now, having said that, we can start talking about when we're going to do that in relationship to a vote to support the Mesquite Lake also.
Well, you know, cute dude, what we could do is send it to the LAFCO in Sacramento and bypass a local LAFCO out commission.
My name's Oscar Gonzalez. I have a BA in political science from UCSB 1970, and I have a master's from Cal State North Ridge in 1 year, 1971. My master was in budget and public policy. And I just wanted to ask the IID, how come we cannot get a simple budget? You know, we have debits and credits so that I don't understand the budget. You know,
Oscar, is this related to the Mesquite Keystone Planning?
No, I just
budget,
want to
or-
ask, isn't this public?
No, we had public comments already at the
I'm
beginning of the
sorry.
meeting. We're
Well-
talking about Keystone.
Can I just ask?
Well, you can bring it up to the next public comments meeting.
Well,
I'm
I
sorry,
just
but we
wanted
have
to,
keep-
let me finish the statement.
Oscar, I'm sorry. I allowed you last time, but this time we have to keep with our agenda. So, Eric, would
Okay,
you please?
I hope that we could have something simple because I've been here 15 years and I've never been able to understand the budget. And I'm an expert
Mr.
at that.
Gonzalez?
I was a senior
Oscar,
analyst. Thank
Oscar,
you.
please. Next meeting, please.
I was a senior analyst for the county for 10 years and I don't understand.
You can get with Dr. Brady on that.
I hope somebody could explain the budget to me.
Eric?
All right, Eric Reyes.
I'm too dumb.
We were at the county this morning also bringing these same concerns regarding this request here that, and I know your staff will find a way to make it fit your local entity, requirements, but in the spirit of what was voted on and the money was supposed to be used for, these studies and analysis that you're putting people to, a very small amount of people to work for at this time, and then the fruition of that project, who knows if it even comes through, that's a very poor use of that money, local entity money. There's other ways to fund it. As we spoke, we're not against the project per se. We're definitely against local entity money being used that were for socioeconomic impacts, creating jobs today, not 10 years from now, if ever. Infrastructure needs and so on. You know, you guys have a on-farm conservation plan as part of the QSA that we could definitely create a lot of jobs with that local entity money and put people to work right away. When, you know, our employment rate is skyrocketing, so many issues, and you have this project that's, obviously political and has a lot of people involved. And I asked at the county, he says that the private sector will have its, pay part of it. We want to see that in writing. How much are they going to come up with before you use public funds, commit public funds to that? And then, yes, I agree with Mrs. Mendoza. Anybody who's suing you obviously should not be funded. I think that's what was thrown at the Imperial Group when they came with some ideas for the Salton Sea and so on. We would not fund anybody who's suing us at this time. And I hope you stick to that as well, not bow down to the county on this issue, on this specific project. There's so many projects in Imperial County that could be used that people come, and also they're circumventing the local entity process as well. If it's going to go through a local entity, let them go through the RFP process. Let them come before you and the public with specific details. We've seen very few details. Even the letter you sent, those specific projects that you want to fund at this time, doesn't have exactly what it's going to cost, what it entails. I think we all deserve that, and how much the county is putting in of that money as well. How much is going to cost in man hours of county time, which is money we understand. How much money the county is kicking in at the time for those same plans and studies. Those are all issues that we'd like to bring forward. And like I said, the spirit of the local entity money for socioeconomic mitigation, I don't see how it's being met. And I know you'll spin it and make it meet it if that's what you want to do, because that's your right as elected officials. But if you do vote on this, I hope it's voted on before the elections in June as well. Let us know, let the public know where you're spending. That money could be used so much. There's people losing homes, people losing jobs, small businesses that could use little startup money, little contingency money, 20, 30, 40,000 at a time. So many things that could be done. And this project, it's a red herring in a lot of ways. Who are those private owners? How much did they invest to begin with in that land? How much are they going to make out of it? We've seen some of the prices that they're offering for that land now that they know it's ridiculous. I mean, that is almost worthless land without that infrastructure being put in by public funds, and this is public funds. And how much support do you have from other public funds? We do definitely want to know. So many details we'd like to know before we even decide at this point. And also, you shouldn't commit $7.5 million if you do decide to spend the $650,000 at this time, which it shouldn't. It should be year by year contingency as well to see the viability of that. And I hope you also have a prudence review by an independent agency like you did on the transmission lines and so on, because obviously we have interested parties on both sides, all four sides, I would say, City of Brawley as well, who have not voted officially. They only have voted to get into the talks with the City of Imperial, the County IID. I was at that meeting as well, and I'll be going to the City of Brawley as well. I'm really worried about their commitment to it and Mr. Benson's land and so on, how much he'll profit from all these things. So those are all things I want you to consider. And again, definitely not the way, it's bad enough that you're giving 2/3 of the money to a small group of people, and yet you're going to take another big chunk out of the money that could be available for projects, for jobs, for small businesses. If anything, you want to be fair, at least 2/3, 1/3 from pay for it out of that. I don't know why you don't want to touch the non-competitive side. I mean, it's enormous the amount of money you're giving to certain individuals as well, and I just want all those things considered, and the public will know these things as well. Thank you.
Oscar, you're only allowed 5 minutes. You're down to 1. And
Thank you.
Are you going to keep it under Keystone Planning area? Go ahead.
Does it deal with what he was talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I hope if you do fund, developers, I'm looking at the time, when developers come, they always come with two hands and they want welfare. We have a gentleman in Calexico that wants money and tax money. And I've seen historically developers, thousands and millions of dollars, I've got 30 seconds, that have all kinds of ideas and leave cities, public utilities strung out within a matter of 1 to 3 years, all kinds of money. Look at General Dynamics or whatever. It's defunct. And the same thing, pie in the sky, everybody wants jobs. I think you should be aware. I remember when I was in the Planning Commission, Mr. Wiley wanted to build an oil recycling plant, and I was the chairman of the Planning Commission. Thanks to Louis Legaspi and Jim Harmon, he gave me all the bullets because I was only one and I was about 24 years old. And we stopped that oil recycling plant where the portico is now, and we stopped it. And thanks to Jim Harmon, gave me all the silver bullets, and we stopped it. It's not there. They wanted, the government was going to give him $20 million, and he was only going to put $100,000. He had a home in Riverside, and of course Louis did all the research, and I was very afraid because I didn't even know what was I doing. But luckily, we never have it built. And if you do fund, look at all the projects that have been funded. They get folded anywhere from 1 to 3 years under the auspices that we're going to build jobs. How many of those programs have been defunct? And how many have lasted? Very few.
Thank you, Oscar.
We're going to build jobs in the tax base, and all of them get defunct and leave.
Thank you, Oscar.
So you better
Tom?
watch when they say they're going to build jobs. They come here and they rip us off, and we get...
Thank you, Oscar. Tom?
Tom Tapuzis, El Centro. I'm going to talk about creating jobs.
I want to be one of those developers too.
No, I must. I'm
Go to Switzerland.
Mr.
here.
Mr. Gonzalez, if you don't keep quiet, we're going to ask you to leave the meeting
I'll leave right now.
because you're being disruptive.
I'll leave right now.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here on behalf of IVEDC. Also, I need to disclose that one of my clients is the 101 branch, Brookfield 101 Ranch, which is investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in the development of a master planned community for the Keystone area, and has committed to supporting the water reclamation plant and growth in jobs in the valley. I think the real issue here is the vitality of creating jobs in the valley. The Keystone planning area, as you know, is huge. It goes from Brawley through the county down to Imperial. The reclamation plant also includes IVC. It's a very large development that's going to take 20, 25 years to build out. There have been a lot of efforts made to bring jobs into the valley. This project provides key infrastructure for that. And as Mr. Huberger had announced, it's a variety of issues. It isn't just funding for one particular aspect of it, but various pieces which will create the opportunity for us to create these additional jobs through the assistance of IID, through the assistance of the county, through the assistance of private developers. I realize that there's a lot going on. I realize this is an information item, but what I would ask that you do is consider the value of this investment to the number of jobs that will be created. to the economic growth that will help for the valley and for the quality of life in the valley. Are there any questions?
So, Mr.
Thank you,
Tapuzas,
Tom.
I have never doubted the value of this project. And the very beginning, I supported it. And it's a good project, but I have issues with lawsuits that are costing this district millions of dollars to defend.
And I understand that, and I totally respect that. I mean, that's just, you know, it would be nice if all the lawsuits could be resolved instantaneously. I think if everybody works together, they can be reduced, and that's certainly something that I think we all want.
It is my hope that we can do that.
Yes, it's mine too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Luis?
Good afternoon, Luis Olmedo with Comité Cívico. And, you know, my comments to the Keystone Planning Project is that, as Council was gracious enough to remind us, that this money is for socioeconomic impacts. And I'd like to ask that this board stick to that. And you know, we have needs now to create jobs. I mean, I speak to a lot of small business owners, and they're ready. They're ready to hire. And they can create jobs now, put money in the pockets of people, and get this economy going. Just same spirit that the federal government has used to put money in this county and in development projects that have gone on. I think this project could probably apply for some of that funding and not necessarily touch the funding that is meant for socioeconomic impacts that can be addressed and can be taken care of now. Other things is that, you know, in the future, I would imagine that Brawley may find it more feasible to grow towards, because of the new river and so forth, to grow towards the south, and Imperial likewise move towards the north. And I think by pretty much setting this area as a heavy industry zone, and we've seen how heavy industry has put detrimental impact on development over the years. I mean, we've learned from those experiences already. I mean, right now, currently, there is a Superfund site. Many of you might remember Stoker. I mean, it's still there, and it still hasn't been addressed. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that need to be considered when moving into this project. And, I mean, there's another example. I mean, when developers came in, and I understand this is a local project, but developers came in and built homes. You know, it said Melrose, and when things just went back, they just picked up and left. And you know, you can see the impacts of that now. Where's the investment now? Now, I mean, the costs are still there. Somebody's going to have to pay for them. And there's and again, I think this money should be left to having more outcomes now. I mean, you all know that the unemployment rate and where we're at with all that. So, I mean, I don't need to remind this board, but I think looking at it from that standpoint, and that a lot of these projects, I mean, I don't think these funds were intended for groundwork or development for private investment, but they were meant to create jobs. And right now, there's a big need to create jobs now. And again, I don't think there's any guarantees like we've seen with many different examples. And I mean, this could fit many examples you all have seen yourselves. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Luis. Are there any other comments on the request from Imperial for Keystone Planning Area Project? Mr. Gerber, if that's all you have, we will move on.
No, he has to address my comments, he said.
Okay.
I promised
He's
I'd
still
respond.
cute. I want you to know, he's very cute.
You know, before I say what I was going to say, is a number of years ago, used to be a county supervisor, now works for you by the name of Brad Lucky. And he used to tell me, because as some of you know, I tend to say things and get myself into trouble periodically, and he used to call me up in the morning before a board meeting, he'd say, now remember, you got to drain the swamp before you swim with the alligators. I never seem to have learned that. January marks 35 years of doing this. And by now you'd think I'd be smart enough just to shut up and sit down. But with respect to your board,
There he goes.
like I said, I can retire tomorrow,
However.
so who cares? No, back to Ms. Mendoza's comments, and I believe Mr. Hanks as well. Number one, I understand your position, with regards to litigation. You asked that I relay a message to the board, and I'll be happy to do that. I'm sure they probably already know that, but I'll be happy to reiterate it to them of your concerns. And I think probably both sides would be happy if the litigation could be made to go away. And I think Mr. Hanks started to allude to the fact that we need to sit down together, seriously, the county and the IID, the right people, and try to figure out a way to resolve it. And I think that's the only way to get it done. Because we can, as you said, keep suing each other and both sides spend a lot of money. But I'm not here as their attorney, and I'm not an attorney, thank God. So, I can't speak for it in that regard. I do think, however, that we need to think beyond the lawsuits. And there's been, like I said, in 35 years, I know there's been more than one time that the IID and the county had tiffs with each other. This is probably one of the more serious ones. But we need to think beyond the lawsuits. We need to think about the future of this whole county and the constituents. And I've heard a lot of comments this morning saying, well, this isn't the right project or this or that or the other. There's never a right project. Like I said, I've been doing land use planning stuff for 35 years, and there's always 2 or 3 sides and people that are for and against. Based on the information that we've given you, based on the information we have, this area represents a real opportunity for some really diverse development, some real good economic development. It has to be done right. I agree with that. And it has to be done timely. Every week we get requests for people trying to locate businesses here. We work with the other economic development corporations like IVDC, and we get businesses all the time looking at us. And the one problem we routinely have is we do not have an area where they can locate without having to go through months or years of land use planning. You just asked about your own project. Okay, you were somewhat frustrated, I detected, from not having gone through the process in, a year and a half? Mm-hmm. I think this is 3rd year for Brookfield, okay? And they're in an area that we're actually trying to develop. So all I'm saying...
We're also trying to develop the 80 acres. We're ready to go.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Everybody, when they come in. But I think you'll find that a lot of businesses would have a lot more interest if they could come in and pray, and I'll say this carefully, at worst have to get a building permit, okay? But when they have to get land use, zone changes, general plan amendments, and it takes years and more than years, a lot of businesses leave. And that's what this area offers. It doesn't compete with others. It was designed not to compete with the cities. Early on, we made that decision not to do industrial parks that competed with the cities. It was designed not to take valuable ag land out of production. It was located in an area that, but for the drainage, really was ideal. It was centrally located. Everybody's going to benefit from the jobs that are created there because whoever works there can live in any of the other cities. It has a lot of the infrastructure there. So there's a golden opportunity. And, if we can't, if we're going to just hang everything on the lawsuit and that doesn't go away for several years, which I hope it does go away, but if it doesn't, we're going to lose a real opportunity. That's all. But I do respect your concern. I fully respect your position, and I'll be happy to relate to my bosses that you're very concerned.
Well, this is a tremendous project for the Imperial Valley. So I need you to help me to make the right decision.
Then you need to vote yes.
No, it's on your shoulders. You go talk to your Board of Supervisors.
Well, that is the right decision, voting yes, but I understand why you can't at this point in time.
And
Absolutely.
I've never said it's not a good project. I'm excited about it. It's a good deal for the valley and for its people. But, we have other issues that we have to deal with as well. So.
Understood.
Yeah, Jörg, from a business standpoint, these 6 items that you have listed here, the $650,000, aside from they were looking for the board for a commitment of $750 over a 10-year period, but the items that you listed here for the $650,000, that basically gets the plan jump-started off the ground and gets some things going that kind of gets you down the road. If there was some private funds or other things like that were put into this deal, right?
Yes, this is, like I said, this is, as Mr. Hanks pointed out, sort of a foundation. These are the sort of the first steps we need to do. Again, the city of Imperial, they're ready to go with the sewer plant. If that falls out, let me put it to you a different way. If the city of Imperial elects just to say, enough is enough, we need our sewer plant, we're going to go build it somewhere else because this is never going to happen or we can't wait that long, then you might just as well consider this project about 10 years or more behind, if at all. Because frankly, the sewer plant alone that the city of Imperial is moving forward with is a real crucial item. Now, so far Marlene has been very adamant that she wants to, toe the line and keep going. But if we keep delaying it and they can't build it in the Mesquite area, it's just that much harder to get the project going. So, all these pieces kind of have to fit together. And that's why I'm saying I think we really need to seriously think about moving this forward one way or the other. I understand all your positions. And I'll be glad to relay the news about litigation. But
So what you're saying is that if Imperial doesn't build the sewer plant in the Keystone area, it would delay the project for about 10 years?
or possibly not get built for even longer, because you have to remember that the way this project was structured, it was basically originally a partnership with Imperial and the county, because they needed a sewer plant, they needed a little location. We agreed. County doesn't want to be in the sewer and water treatment business. We have very bad experience doing that. My orders from the board have been, don't get us into that again, so we're not doing that. We're hoping that Imperial will take on the task of treating the sewer. We've also talked to the city of Brawley about providing water from their current water plant, at least as a startup. Eventually, the sewer plant, let's say, has the potential of also serving portions of the south end of Brawley, because topographically it all works really well. So if the sewer plant can be located there, because, how do I explain this? Let's put it this way. When we did the gateway, we needed a sewer plant out there, but there were no users, but we still had to build a sewer plant. So ever since we've built that plant, there have been a minimal amount of users, and the landowners are basically having to pay for that sewer plant as a sort of a supplemental tax. Here we have an opportunity for the city to basically build a plant that they need. They automatically have a whole host of users to start with. And that makes the economics completely different than if we have to go out there and build a plant and hope that they will come in order to pay for the plant. So yeah, it is critical to it. I can't say it will kill the project, but it will certainly delay it, because that's just another 40, 50, 60 million. I think right now the estimate is about 80 million for the total plant at build out. 65? Okay.
That was going to be my question. What's the total cost for the total infrastructure to get Keystone up and running?
We don't have a total cost for all the infrastructure. You know, we're looking at IID infrastructure that we don't know, that part of this will analyze. We have the cost of the plant, the sewer plant, as Marlene just pointed out, roughly 65 million for the full plant. Now, we're not going to go out there and obviously build a huge plant when we don't need it, so it'll be built in phases. And I think the first part's, what, about 30? 25, 30 millions for the first phase. And again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to leverage by using the city of Brawley's existing water plant by simply upgrading it, because they do have the capacity to upgrade it, they have the area. That's a lot cheaper to upgrade that plant and provide startup water than it is to go build another $20 or $30 million water treatment plant. So again, all of these partnerships, you know, have an advantage. I mean, you folks are doing your part, obviously, but at the same time, you folks are going to benefit from this, because you will have power sales and whatever else comes out of it in the end. So, you know, if we're successful at getting large companies to locate there, they're going to need power from you.
All right. I think Eric had another comment.
I got one more. Eric, let me ask him Jurg another question. On basically, even though originally, you know, the request was $7.5 million over a 10-year period, but what you've laid out here in a letter is to move this project forward, you need $650,000 to take care of these 6 issues or items that you have here, to try to keep things rolling. Is kind of what you're asking for at this point in time, even though you want, from the overall standpoint, you're looking at $750,000 a year for 10 years.
Right. Originally, as you recall, Mr. Grogan, who's sitting there in the audience, was a supervisor, and he came to you, along with me in tow, asking that you consider committing roughly $750,000 for a 10-year period. At that time, he stated the county would then pick up from there on in. What we're looking at here is, in working with Dr. Brady and your staff, is doing certain steps, put a price to them. And as I said, I think this first set of 6 items, we've put a price to each one of those items, and it totals just right around $650,000. So what we're saying is, let's fund these items to get started. It's less than the $750,000, and as I said on the onset, I'm not here to ask you for 10 years of funding. Number one, I think that would be ludicrous for me to do. Number two, I definitely
For 2, you wouldn't get it.
Well, see, now there you go. But no, seriously. We want to come back to you. We wanted to present it to you what you had asked for a year ago, and that was a plan on how to implement this. That's what we're here for. We've given you what we think the first 6, 7 steps are. we get these going, as I said, it's going to take more than a year to get all these done. Somewhere along the line, we would then move to the next series of steps that we'd want to do. And again, these steps weren't the county's ideas, okay? They were in partnership with your staff. Your staff said, hey, you know what? We got to do this study for the IID anyway. How about we fund this study through this money to the benefit of the IID? So half, or at least 3 of these items are things that are studies that your staff feels they need to have done. Whether you fund it out of this, under this program, or anywhere else, they're going to come to you and say, we need to get this done. It's going to cost us this much. So in essence, you're paying yourself at least half of this money.
The board might want to consider directing Mr. Huberger to go ahead and submit a local entity application because I know that the competitive bids are going to be out for a public bid in the very near future. I know that they're putting that together now. That would preserve all Mr. Reyes's complaints, and it would bring this in the form of the local entity where you guys can work it out.
Okay. Eric?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Eric again, Eric Reyes. Well, first clarify, he says that there always be opponents or proponents of it. I'm not opposing the project per se because I don't know enough. Neither do you. You don't even tell you how much the total cost is going to be. So I can't make a definite no on this project. I want to clarify that. I am definitely opposed to using local entity funds, which were meant to mitigate social impacts now of people who are out looking for work, people who are scrambling, people who are not able to come to IID meetings because they're not on staff time as well. And we want to be that voice. We don't say we represent them. We say we understand where they're coming from and how they don't have time to come here. And we do want to make sure that voice is heard. And like I said, without knowing what the total project of infrastructure, we've been told it's astronomical because of the drainage issue. Without having those specifics, I mean, it's almost ludicrous to vote on giving $650,000 and then using Imperial's threat not to go through with their water treatment plant as to not. I mean, that's a threat you guys don't need to take. It's a viable project for the IID. I think it truly is. If you do a prudence review of it, give it to us as the public. It's a viable project for the IID if they find alternative funding, not just local entity. There's so many ways you fund it. Your 80 acres over there, you're not going to use local entity for that. There are other means of funding it. Other economic development programs you have, economic development projects you have funded have come from different means from the IID. Raleigh Beef Plant didn't come from local entity and so on. Infrastructure for the mall did not come from the beef plant. From the local entity. There were funds for it. Public benefit charges with economic development. There's profit if you continue on this water transfer. You're supposed to be in a profit margin soon. I haven't seen a line item. I will be looking at that. Where is that money going to be dedicated? I mean, those other ways the IID can be involved. And also, if you cut some consultants and put that money into this project, I'm all for that. I mean, we all know IID overspends on consultants, right? I'm not getting any nods, but that's all right. There's ways of doing this. There's ways of funding this. And also, if the county is asking for $650,000, are they matching that $650,000? I haven't heard that. I heard from Mr. Tapusa's good man who said that private sector is putting up its money. It's easy to say. I want to see it in writing. I think the public deserves. How much are they matching? Is it 1 for 1, 2 for 1? It should be 10 to 1 for people who will make millions of dollars, right? If you think about it with public funds. Again, I want to clarify, I'm not opposed, as Mr. Huberger said, to this project. I'm opposed to the way it's being funded through a local entity and circumventing the local entity project, and that was not my only concern. The viability of the project and lack of details to total cost, that's what I'm most opposed to. Thank you.
Mr. Sanchez, may I make a comment that I don't think that Ms. Bess is making a threat. I think that what she stated and what Mr. Huberger stated is correct. And I understand having served on the Raleigh City Council for 2 terms, I know what you all are going through is not an idle threat. And I myself do not have a problem using local entity money to fund this project. It is a good project, but again, from the very beginning, you all know where I stand with these lawsuits. And so we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, let me say one other comment. I think this project has been pretty well laid out, and Mr. Huberger, I know that the county, in order to bring this thing about to be a specific planning area, the county has put money, because I know you guys, in the years past, I think you've put a lot of money into this project, even to get it to the point of where it's at as an SBA.
Yes,
You've also got the enterprise zone sitting down there on the northern part. that the county and Brawley and the IID all participate in, and there's a lot of things going on in this Keystone planning area.
Right, with the exception of the $75,000 that you helped us with the specific plan, we're probably somewhere around $1 million plus right now in what we've invested in the project when you consider the planning effort, the EIR, the enterprise zone commitments, and again, you folks are part of the enterprise zone commitment as well. You fund a third of that, just as the county funds a third of it every year. So we all have a stake in this fight, if you will. Okay, I do want to just say something. I didn't mean and I did not say as a threat that Imperial would pull the plug. What I'm telling you is there's absolutely no reason for Imperial to build a sewer plant out in the Mesquite Lake area but for this project, okay? Why would they build a 5 or 6 mile pipeline that far out just for being nice? No, of course not. We partnered with them with the anticipation of making it work better. City of Imperial can build that plant a lot closer to the city and not have to bear the cost of the infrastructure going to it. So it's not a threat, it's a reality check, okay?
Yeah, I think I've been to some of the meetings, and I'll make it short, but to me, if this thing got off the ground and got moving, it would help the city of Brawley, because I know they got metered, now they got excess water, and their water rates are going up. The more users they'd have, that helps overall on their water bills for the city, and the same thing with Imperial. And there's been a lot of planning and a lot of meetings that have gone into this thing. So overall, I think this is a good project. You just got to figure out how to get the funding to get this thing jump-started and get it moving forward. So, we're working on trying to get there, Jörg.
Talk to your Board of Supervisors, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
What started out as a difficult but rather direct, simple request has become a maze of issues for me. What I'd like to see happen is, because this has been tied to legal issues, and we're also on our resolution on an appeal, it has in there about our talks with the county. I think we need to tie that all together, move ahead with it, and look at the different variables as far as funding opportunities. And then I'd like to see a recommendation come back from staff of where we go from here, because this thing is tied to 2 or 3 different issues now.
Yeah,
and some of it probably has to do with legal strategic planning. So.
And in fact, staff is planning on making a recommendation to the board with regard to the payment in lieu of taxes issue.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President, can I ask one question in reference to Mr. Garber's comments earlier? He indicated that I should consider filing a request. Is that something that I really need to do, the county needs to do? Because I wouldn't want to not do it and then come back and go, well, we told you so. So is that definitely something we need to do?
I would think it would be the smartest way to preserve this request, because typically local entity activity and funding is made based on a bid, either competitive or non-competitive. And I haven't talked to Gustavo lately, but I understand that they're about to release the rules for that. I think it would be much more difficult if you were not part of that process. I'm not telling you what's going to happen, but just from a practical standpoint, I think it makes the most sense, and the timing is perfect for you.
Now, who does Mr. Huberger have to talk to get all the information and the forms and so forth?
Our office or Mr. Reza. If Mr. Huberger sends me an email, I'll put him in touch with Mr. Reza.
I'll get with your attorney on it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Here.
Are you going to bring those regs to us? Let us look at them? We are the local entity now, I understand.
You're talking about what regs we...
Local entity.
You're talking about yes. You're talking, I'm at a loss for words, but I'm trying to remember what we call that. It's not, we don't call it regs, we call it the non-competitive or competitive program, yeah. Okay. In fact, I need to check with them because I don't know when they were planning on putting the competitive program out for bid.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Mike King, Water General Manager, Matters.
We're going to have Bruce Wilcox. We have one water-related item, and Bruce is going to do that.
Dr. Brady, Board. I'm Bruce Wilcox with the Imperial Irrigation District, but today I'm here as a member of the Salton Sea International Bird Festival Planning Committee, and we wanted to show our appreciation to the IID for their continued support of the Salton Sea International Bird Festival. Without your help, we wouldn't be able to put this on, It's a very important biological symposium that will occur from the 11th through the 14th of February. There's a lot of local involvement with it. Al Kalin, Marie Barrett are on the committee and are also presenting. We also are going to spotlight some of what IID has done for mitigation under the QSA. We'll have one day where we will tour the managed marsh, and there'll be a panel afterwards discussing managed marsh issues and creation and planning of managed marshes. And then there'll be 2 days of bird tours on Saturday and Sunday. So we'd like to invite the entire board of directors and the general manager's office to this festival. And we'd like to invite the general public too. I've left some of the brochures over on the table. But again, thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
Moving on to an update. Oh, Director Mike.
Dr. Brady, on the
Yes.
operational agreements on drop tube reservoir, when will those be final and for us for our review?
I don't have that information for you, but Mike?
Talking about the O&M and stuff like that, that's still being worked on at this time. We've had some conversation with Bureau that, they're getting this thing done soon, and they're going to want to start operation probably by June or July, somewhere in that, or maybe even sooner. And we still haven't, our staff has been involved in the development of that, but we have not seen the final product or even a draft, some of the drafts on that yet. So I'll be in conversations with Jennifer McCloskey today or tomorrow, basically talking about some number of issues. Number one is the O&M agreement, and also a fill-up agreement for they're going to use the river water to transfer and fill it up and test it, and those types of issues as we move forward on that. And we haven't had anything in our hands to show to the board yet. So as soon as we get those, we will be bringing them to the board to look at.
But it'll be brought before the board before it's turned on, right?
They may try to fill it up, but as far as operating it, we won't operate it until we know we're going to get paid and et cetera, et cetera. That's correct.
Okay.
Make sure the money's in the bank.
All right. Update on Colorado River Board.
Yes, Mr. President, members and members of the public, we have Jerry Zimmerman, Executive Director of Colorado River Board of California. He's going to give us a update on the River Basin Water Supply and Demand Study and United States-Mexico cooperative process. Jerry.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. President, members of the IID Board, it's a pleasure being here again. I think I was here approximately a year ago. I think I had to come down more often, enjoy the nice weather you have this time of year rather than wait till July or August. Today I just have a brief presentation. I plan on covering two topics. One is the Colorado River Basin Water Supply and Demand Study that is cooperatively being studied among the 7 Colorado River Basin states and the Bureau of Reclamation. And two, briefly touch on the status of the discussions with Mexico and looking at potential projects that may have binational benefits to both countries. In looking at the Basin States Reclamation Study, at the request of the Bureau of Reclamation, the 7 basin states got together and submitted an application to compete Bureau of Reclamation wide for funding. The total funding that was available was about $3 million of federal funds. Those funds were to be cost shared by the project sponsors and Reclamation. The 7 Colorado Basin states were lucky enough or fortunate enough to have their application accepted by the Bureau of Reclamation. The purpose of that study is primarily to look comprehensively at the water supply and demand within the Colorado River Basin and adjacent areas, and to identify the imbalances that we have currently or may occur in the future between the water supply available and the demands. We're also going to look at the risks to the basin resources under alternate demands, as well as looking at how climate change, climate variability may impact that into the future. We're having a 50-year horizon, so the study will be looking out 50 years. And if you look at some of the climate change models, if you look out 50 years, there could be drastic changes in the available supply from the Colorado River. We're going to be doing model studies to look at that, trying to disaggregate some of the global climate models into more regional models that will provide better information than we've had in the past. We're also going to look at development and analyzation of adaptation, how we might adapt in the future, as well as mitigation strategies to resolve or address the imbalances that are identified. Yes?
Your third bullet, that doesn't include looking at the river compact, does it?
No.
Reallocating according to the river compact?
No. We're not going to do anything that would cause a renegotiation of the compact or the law of the river as it currently exists. However, in the analysis, when we begin to look at potential projects or programs to address the imbalances, we might identify that in order to move that project or program forward, we would need to address the existing law of the river, and that would be a legal challenge.
What do you mean by that? Address it with, talk to me in plain English. What are you talking about?
At this point, I have no idea.
She just Jerry, she just wants to know if you're getting friendly with Pat Mulroy or not, that's all.
Well, Pat Mulroy has changed. She is not ready to change the compact. I believe...
Not her freaking compact.
I believe all 7 states believe, and I have from the beginning, that the compact was set up and provided specific allocation between the upper basin and the lower basin. The Arizona versus California decree firmly established the rights that are from the mainstream that are apportioned to Arizona, California, and Nevada. Within the framework of the compact and the decree and the Upper Colorado River Basin Compact, I think that we have found that you can keep those compacts and the provisions in there sacrosanct and still look cooperatively among the 7 states and look at programs, projects that can address critical water supply needs
like the drop
throughout the
reservoir.
basin. Right.
That's one
The
of those.
coordinated operating criteria is a primary example.
Okay.
If you look at the law of the river, one could argue you can't coordinate the operation of Lake Powell and Lake Mead. The 7 states have found a way to agree that we will look at coordinated operation for an interim period that benefits both the upper basin and benefits the lower basin. And so as we identify potential projects and programs to address the imbalances, that's what we would be doing again. Saying, here we have the law of the river, the compacts, the decrees, the regulations. Can we, as 7 states, water users within those 7 states, agree that we can address that imbalance by modifying maybe the operation, by doing something else that would assist?
What do you mean by something else that would exist?
That's thinking outside the box. I don't have anything in mind at this point in time.
Just don't think outside the compact, so I'm telling you.
We will not adjust the compact.
All right. Thank you.
We aren't planning to go to the Supreme Court and get the decree modified, or at least I'm not. But if you look at historically where we've been in the Colorado River Basin, and you start in 1923, and the top line showing the 10-year running average of the available supply, the blue line showing the growing demands within the basin, you can see that in 1994, there was almost an imbalance. And if you look at today, there is an imbalance between the supply and demand. And that's just looking at climate variability. That's not looking at climate change. And that's not looking out 50 years with a growing population and other demands that are expected to occur between now and 50 years from now. And so for us to get ahead of the game and begin to look at how can we address the potential imbalance between water supply and demand within the basin, and you need to recognize this is within the basin. If you look within California, I would argue that we had an 800,000 acre-foot imbalance once a QSA was executed. Now, we've lived within that imbalance with the help of IID and others with some of the transfers to meet the water supply needs within Southern California. Currently, Arizona is not using its full demand. Currently, Nevada is not using its full demand. I mean, Pat Mulroy argued 3 years ago that they were exceeding it. Today, through the conservation and the efforts by the Southern Nevada Water Authority, Southern Nevada Water Authority had excess water this year. They didn't use their full demand. And so some of that water was made available to Metropolitan to meet its critical needs this year. In the future, Metropolitan will make that water available to Southern Nevada Water Authority. And so those are the types of programs that we have been able to look at within the basin that are assisting in meeting critical water supply needs. We need to look at others. And I think the next slide may. Well, it's the next one shows some of the things the basin states have been doing, looking at augmentation and other programs to augment available supply. If we look at the current status of the basin study, the actual kickoff meeting occurred on January 22nd. This study is a 2-year effort, $2 million, 50% to be shared by the 7 basin states, each of the 7 states contributing 1/7 and 50% by the federal government. For California's portion, the 6-agency committee is contributing California's 1/7, which is about $143,000 over this 2-year period. In addition to the funding that has been committed to do the basin study, the reclamation as well as each of the other states are looking at potential in-kind services above and beyond the $1 million that each of us have committed to make sure that we do a really good job in assessing the imbalance between water supply and demand, the risks, and identifying potential opportunities to address the imbalance. Throughout this study, we've identified a proactive public involvement process that has been set up. There has been a website set up on the Bureau of Reclamation's webpage that addresses the basin study, are requesting comments throughout the process from the public and others. And if we look at the actual identified study participants, the study participants are a representative from each of the 7 basin states and a representative from the Upper Colorado region of the Bureau of Reclamation and the Lower Colorado region. Also, there has been a designated project team that is guiding this project as we move forward. I would say the project team then expands from the 7 state representatives, and in fact, Imperial Irrigation District has representative on the project team that will help guide the study, as do the other agencies within Southern California. As I pointed out, in addition to the cost-share partners, the project team, there's project stakeholders. And throughout the process, we'll be asking others to provide input, data, comments, and participate in this project. The identified objectives of the project are to look at modifications to Operating guidelines, similar to what we did with the coordinated operation between Lake Powell and Lake Mead, looking at procedures procedures of the water supply systems, modifications to existing facilities, development of new facilities. We're looking at potential modifications to existing water conservation and management programs and development of new programs, modifications to existing water supply enhancement programs, and development of new programs. I think I know that Mr. Menville is aware. Currently, the six-agency committee is participating with Arizona and Nevada in helping to fund a weather modification program where we're extending an ongoing programs within Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming dealing with weather modification to assist in enhancing the available water supply from the Colorado River. Also,
Would that include like extra storage for the IID?
that could be. I mean, right now, we're at the beginning of the study process, so comments are welcome from everybody in how we might begin to address.
I can't speak for the board, but I think we all know that we need storage, and if we could store the water up there, that'd be great.
Stored in Colorado, you mean?
No. Store it like in Lake Mead. Store it for us.
Currently, you have that opportunity through the
Small
intentionally.
amount. It's almost nothing.
Currently, IID could store up to 50,000 acre feet.
Yeah. We need more storage.
Okay. And this gets to some of your questions. As we move through, the attorneys and others will be looking at potential legal or regulatory constraints that we need to be addressing and facing. We'll also be looking at analyzing potential impacts to water users, the basin resources, for strategies and options that could be considered in the process. What we want to end up with at the end is to prioritize identified strategies and options that may be available to address the imbalances, and to identify recommendations for future action, including feasibility studies, potential congressional action, look at environmental compliance that we need to begin to move forward in order to implement a program, look at potential demonstration projects, and or implementation where it's appropriate. And I just wanted to point out the Upper Colorado River Basin has identified a new demand schedule. And if we look at the black line, that's the way it existed when we did the the NEPA compliance for the coordinated operations of Lake Powell and Lake Mead, and looking at shortage guidelines for the lower basin. The red one, that's immaterial, or the red one shows essentially the same thing, except the the lower basin has identified a new intentionally created surplus schedule. So we can think of the red and the black lines essentially as the same. But if you look at the average Lake Powell elevation between the red line and the green line, that shows the impact on Lake Powell that the new projections provided by the upper basin will have. And if you look at the 10 percentile, which means 10% of the time it's this value or lower, you can see what happens to Lake Powell. And so with the new projections from the upper basin, we're going to show a larger imbalance than what I showed in the earlier graph. And if we look at what happens to Lake Mead, at both a 90 percentile level and the 10 percentile level, there's not really significant change. But you can see with the new upper basin depletions at the 50 percentile, it's going to have a significant impact on the elevation of Lake Mead. Then if we look at shortages, you can see that shortages within the lower basin, in accordance with the shortage criteria that were recently adopted, you can see that those are going to occur more often and larger amounts. What we hope this study will do is build upon the efforts that the states, the agencies within Southern California have embarked on in the last few years, such as the 2008 interim guidelines for coordinated operation. Also, the Basin States Augmentation Study that was recently completed, and the overall interest in all 7 Colorado Basin states in looking at how we may be able to address the critical water supply needs throughout the basin. You might ask, why do I believe it's important to California? I believe that the product 2 years from now that identifies the priority of strategies and options that we should be looking at are essential for us to continue to meet the critical water supply needs within each of the states. And I would say that even includes IID. I see IID, that this study effort is very important to the Imperial Irrigation District, as it is to Coachella, as it is to the Metropolitan Water District. Because having the 7 states, the water agencies within those states working to identify the priorities of the programs that we need to be looking at moving forward with is a lot better than having individual agencies such as Southern Nevada Water Authority or the Metropolitan Water District or the state of Colorado identifying isolated programs to move forward with. This way you have the input of all of the interests within the Colorado River Basin that are looking at the imbalances and how we as a group believe that they should be addressed.
Are you going to have like public workshops throughout the basin states, or is this all going to be on your
There
website?
will be public there will be public workshops throughout the program, and those will primarily be after the major products are produced in this 2-year period.
Where do you plan to hold those workshops? Like,
They're still being designed at this point, as far as the locations.
you going to have one in the Imperial Valley?
I
hope you do.
Okay.
I would request that you do.
Okay. That request should be made to Terry Fulp from the
Mr.
Bureau of
King will
Reclamation.
make
He
that.
is the project manager, but I will, since I sat on the project team, I will make your request known.
Thank you very much.
Okay? And if we get into the deliverable projects or products, yes, jump here.
I've got a question for you before you move.
Oh, Jim.
Move on. In your previous slide, I see some environmental compliance issues and so forth. But one of the things that you'll probably hear more and more from this board, it has to do with water quality regulations. As you're aware, we get a lot of return flow above us. We get no credit for return flow. The Salton Sea issue, the runoff, is always referred to as ag runoff, when in fact it is nothing short of a sand filtering system of the salt that we get from upstream. So as they're making all these plans for an imbalance, one of the things that they have to keep in consideration is what effect that's going to have on the density of the salt that we're going to get, the increase it's going to get. So I would think that a hearing locally here would be very important. A lot of this I'll save for later, but
Yeah.
you know, we always get the 3.1 million acre feet thrown at us. But if you had to put in a desal to take out the salt, what would the volume be then of the water and the brine that's lost out of that? 10%? You know, so it's
Depends on the
those things
plants.
are never seem to be on the radar when it comes to dealing with us. And as you look at these issues, it's going to have to be a major consideration for this area.
And I fully agree. And the environmental compliance here was there would be recommendations on doing additional environmental compliance before you could move forward with any proposed action. At this time, there is, you know, that's one of the things that will be looked at as far as the imbalances. It's what is the current supply and demand within IID? What is it within other districts throughout the Colorado River Basin? And so we will be trying to identify that over the 50-year period, and will rely heavily on the staff of Imperial Irrigation District to help me and my staff identify from within California what is the real demand today and what will the demand be 50 years from now.
Not yet, Oscar, at the end of the meeting.
Okay, these are the milestones. Yeah, by September 2010, we plan on having 2 reports. One would be a report describing the current and future water supply available. The second is the current and future water demand available. Then in April, we will be looking at the water supply and demand that is within those reports and identify what is the system reliability or the risk or the imbalance between water supply and demand. That will be available in April 2011. In August 2011, we would have a report identifying the opportunities that may be out there to address the imbalance between water supply and demand, and then have a draft study report along with appropriate appendices available by October 2011, and then December 2011 have the final report. As you can see, this is a rather aggressive schedule to get all this accomplished within 2 years. I think at this point in time, we believe that we can accomplish that with the expertise within each of the states, as well as, and the Bureau of Reclamation, as well as getting consultants to assist in developing the data and information contained in these various reports. And Stella, there is a public involvement process that has been identified that would be on the Bureau of Reclamation's website associated with the study.
Thank you.
And that concludes the first topic. If we want further questions now before I go into the discussions with Mexico.
Does the board have any further questions?
No.
Oscar, does it relate to this? Okay. Okay. You can come to the podium, Oscar.
What's your name?
Jerry Zimmerman.
Mr. Zimmerman, when you were mentioning about environmental activities, you said something, you know, when it sounds really nice and it sounds like a buzzword. When you do that, what scientific framework or methodology or techniques or basis do you use to consider that? Because I think the environment obviously will be impacted. What does your study address in those concerns? What scientific framework do you guys, besides saying the environmental activities? That's too broad.
Well, environmental activities would include looking at the species, both riverine, riparian, looking at the water quality, looking at the air quality, looking at all of the identified environmental areas that you would look at in a environmental assessment or environmental impact statement. I would say that within this study, we fully anticipate on having a number of environmental groups involved, and so those environmental groups will bring up a number of the environmental issues that I believe that you are concerned with. But definitely, we are going to be looking at salinity and how salinity may be impacted today or in the future with climate variability, with an increased demand, as well as potential with climate change. And if you're looking at potential programs, how is it to address the imbalances? How is the salinity going to change? How is the flow in the river going to change? Is that going to impact the riverine area? That's something that would have to be analyzed as part of the data set in looking at the potential options.
But is it a scientific methodology that you have to use, or is it subjective?
All of the above.
Is there another question?
I don't, at this
the
point in
audience?
time, I can't answer because I'm not sure what you mean by scientific or subjective. But it would be addressed. What I would do is encourage you, as various documents come out, are available on the website, to attend a workshop. Make your comments known. Those comments, I can guarantee you, will be addressed during this process.
I think there was a question behind you.
Karen Williams. I had a question about the augmentation study that you referred to in your presentation, and I was wondering if it's available.
Yes.
And where would I find that?
The Southern Nevada Water Authority was the entity that compiled the augmentation study.
Oh.
We do have copies of that. I could make a PDF and send that to you. I think Imperial Irrigation District has a copy of that augmentation study.
Okay.
It was
I
just-
think we can get it from Mike for you, Karen.
I'll get in touch with you?
Yeah, we'll get it from Mike.
Okay. And I'd like to know if you could make public the presentation that's being presented. We don't have that in our packet.
Sure. Well,
If
we can get it
if
from
Jerry gives us a copy of that PDF, we can print it out for you.
Thank you.
You heard that, Mike, so I don't need to, okay.
Further questions on the basin study?
No, thank you.
Moving into the status of the binational discussions. I think as many or some of you are aware, for the past year plus, we've been having discussions with Mexico regarding potential binational projects that may have benefits to both countries. There was a workshop held between the 7 basin states, Bureau of Reclamation, International Boundary Water Commission from the U.S. with counterparts in Mexico. That workshop was held on August 4th and 5th, During the workshop, Mexico made a number of specific proposals. One of the proposals regarded the creation and use of intentionally created Mexican apportionment, which is the same as within the United States, where IID or other agencies can create intentionally created surplus, but since surplus under the treaty has a different definition than it does within the United States, we elected to use the term Mexican apportionment, or part of Mexico's 1.5 million acre-foot annual delivery. What that does do is allow Mexico to reduce its delivery at the northerly and southerly international boundary in a year, and through that reduction in delivery at the southerly and northerly international boundary, Mexico would then have the opportunity to store that water in Lake Mead for a future use in a future year.
Up to what amount? How many acre feet?
In Mexico's proposal, it was 600,000 acre feet total. Within the U.S. proposal, we suggested that maybe that'd be 400,000, and we will be looking at modeling that looks at the impact between 400 and 600. Mexico also made a proposal related to the environmental needs within Mexico and how water for those needs should be shared between the United States and Mexico. Mexico also identified a proposal for U.S. funding of conservation activities within Mexico. And finally, Mexico made a proposal related to jointly funding and getting benefits from desalination projects within Mexico.
Would Mexico be interested in funding environmental needs in the United States?
We have not had that discussion at this point in time. Based upon Mexico identifying these proposals, we within the United States went back and suggested to Mexico that it's premature to begin discussion of these specific proposals that were advanced by Mexico. What we needed to do rather is get a common database, a common modeling effort that would be able to analyze the benefits and impacts associated with the various projects. And so at an October 14th and 15th workshop, the United States made the proposal that what we need to do is begin to model various scenarios to look at what those impacts, benefits may be within both countries. We did indicate at that October 14th and 15th meeting that the U.S. would be willing to move forward on a small environmental restoration project and a small conservation project that would serve as pilot projects.
Quantify small.
That is still being identified. The last meeting, the United States provided specific criteria for what we believe the environmental project should look like without a definite size, but we did identify criteria that needed to be met in order to serve as a pilot project. Mexico came forward with 2 projects looking kind of like one of the projects, Trifolium Reservoir in the IID, where it'd be a regulation reservoir within the district where Mexico would be able to regulate some surplus water so that that water was not wasted. And Mexico also identified another project looking at some lining. Currently, Mexico is developing further information related to both of those projects and will be considered at a later date. I would say both those projects are fairly small. The reservoir is about 2,000 acre feet. So you can see it's not a huge project. We need to know what the funding would be. We've also asked Mexico how the cost sharing might be, where the benefits would go, et cetera. So we're in the beginning stages of identifying what may be a pilot project. We also indicated that then there's current discussions among San Diego County Water Authority, Southern Nevada Water Authority, and the Metropolitan Water District related to the Rosarita desalination plant. During that meeting, suggested that those discussions could continue and would look at a feasibility study that is being funded by those entities to look at the potential for providing cooperative benefits to the U.S. and Mexico through that project.
Jerry, on that same project there, again, to bring back the issue of the water quality, because if they're putting a plant over at Rosarito, then I just assume that's going to be less water coming down the river. So there goes the issue.
That would be ocean desalination.
Right.
Right.
But that's going to add salt to us.
It shouldn't add more salt to you.
It has to, because we're going to have less flow in the river.
Well, yeah, we're going to, if it is used as ICMA, that's true. If they were to store any of the product water in Lake Mead, there would be less water that could impact the salinity at Imperial Dam and could impact the ability of the United States to continue to meet the salinity differential between Imperial Dam and the northerly international boundary. But if that is a direct pipeline to San Diego, it shouldn't impact the salinity at Imperial Dam.
Right, but how is Nevada going to get their water?
That's still to be discussed.
Well, I'll rest my case.
And so what we did at that workshop in October is present what we believe is a process that we need to use in these binational discussions. And if you look at the blue ring or the black circle, we're right at the beginning, looking at concepts to be analyzed and modeled. Once we get agreement between the U.S. and Mexico that the models are working, that we agree on the impacts associated with various concepts, then we would begin to move into the binational negotiations. And at that point in time, you would be looking at what are the salinity impacts, what are the other water impacts, and the various impacts, and have those within the binational discussions. Coming out of those negotiations, there could be new minutes. And once you have the new minutes, then you could move forward then with specific project negotiations and project implementation. I think that what we within the United States, and I believe that Mexico agrees, that the fundamental concept and a true fundamental benefit for Mexico beside potential U.S. funding of some of the projects is Mexico's ability to create ICMA. And what we need to do is discuss, can Mexico create that during surplus, normal, and shortage conditions, or is it limited in when Mexico would be able to create intentionally created Mexican apportionment? Fundamental to the discussions within the United States, we've said that shortage management has to be a key aspect. And that's kind of a short term for shortage sharing. As we move forward in meeting critical water supply needs, What we have suggested to Mexico is Mexico needs to voluntarily agree to look at sharing in the shortages that currently exist on the Colorado River. Within the 2008 guidelines, there was an assumption made that Mexico would share proportionally with the lower basin, which amounted to about 16%. We've also indicated that we need fundamental for Mexico is looking at conservation and conservation within the Mexicali Valley. Also, Mexico is interested in augmenting its supply, whether that's through desalination or other means. Augmentation is also critical within the United States. Key to all of this is salinity. How is salinity going to be addressed? And so we're beginning to look at the potential salinity impacts. The environmental groups, both within the United States and within Mexico. And I think most of IID's board is aware there is a biosphere that has been designated within Mexico that includes the Delta and the Ciénegas de Santa Clara.
I've been there.
Right.
And they had cattle grazing in the protected land.
Right. I think I was with you.
Yes.
So we need to look at the environment and the potential impacts on environment, and how are we going to cooperatively within the United States and Mexico address the environmental needs today as well as we move into the future. Currently, the U.S. and Mexico have agreed to look at 6 scenarios. The first is the baseline scenario, or essentially the scenario that was modeled in the 2008 guidelines. Second scenario is Mexico's proposed scenario on its schedule and creation of intentionally created Mexican apportionment. Then we have a United States scenario that somewhat restricts the creation and delivery of ICMA. Mexico has requested that it would like to have modeled surplus sharing scenario, where when the lower basin is in a surplus condition, Mexico believes that it should be able to schedule the additional 200,000 acre feet that is available when there is a surplus under the definition of the Mexican Water Treaty.
I don't understand that. I don't understand the concept. They're willing to do that, the surplus, but they're not willing to share in the shortage?
I didn't say that.
That's what I gathered from the presentation.
Right.
Okay.
We're saying that Mexico needs to, and Mexico agrees that it needs to address
share the pain.
The pain. But what that pain is still open for negotiation.
If it hurts, it hurts.
Right. Currently, the way the United States has interpreted when Mexico is eligible to receive the additional 200,000 acre feet under a surplus condition, we need to be in flood stage, or there needs to be flood releases from Hoover Dam. As you know, within the United States, there are other triggers that would allow entities within the United States to have surplus or above the basic apportionment. If there is a quantified surplus, IID can take surplus. If Lake Mead is above 1145, Metropolitan can have a domestic surplus. And so there are other surplus conditions for United States users. Mexico has suggested that it needs to share in those surpluses. One of the scenarios Mexico wanted to identify was Mexico taking no shortages.
Give me a break.
And for modeling purposes, I think we all believe that will provide some valuable information when you look at the benefits and the risks that are being taken under the various scenarios. Mexico also wanted to look at basin-wide shortages. Within the base study, the United States scenario, Mexico shares shortages with the lower basin. If you read the treaty says Mexico shares shortages in the same portion as uses within the United States are reduced. And so Mexico wanted to look at that as one of the scenarios rather than just sharing with the lower basin. And we've agreed to look at that. There has been some modeling. What that does show is that Mexico would have shortages more frequently. In a number of years, they would receive less shortage. But if you aggregate that for the entire period, Mexico would be sustaining about 13.5% more shortages. And so, that's what some of this modeling can show. That can show the impacts. And that will help, I believe, the interests within the United States and Mexico to look at what are these studies showing us? Where can we arrive that does provide minimal pain to each country and maximum benefits to both countries? Okay, I think we've already covered that one. And one of the questions you had, Jim, was on the salinity. And if you look at Mexico being able to create 100,000 acre feet of ICMA, and this is only looking at 1 year. But if you look at that 1 year, what that would show is that would increase the salinity by 11 parts per million. Or if you looked at the water that it would need to be made available to dilute that salinity so that you meet the existing salinity differential of 130 parts per million plus or minus 15, or 115 parts per million plus or minus 30 parts per million, you would need to have 18,650 acre feet of additional water to dilute the salinity in order to meet the salinity differential. If Mexico were to create 400,000 acre feet of water, it would increase the salinity differential by 60 parts per million and require a dilution water of about 64,640 acre feet. And so, yes, salinity is of concern in looking at the salinity differential. One of the things that the modeling group is looking at now is what happens at Imperial Dam, because this did not look at what happens at Imperial Dam. But as you suggested, if there is reduced flow coming down the river, the return flow from Palo Verde Irrigation District, Colorado Indian tribes, and others adding salt would increase the salinity at Imperial Dam. We still need to quantify or look at what that could be.
Mr. Chairman, then those would be considered that Nevada or some of the other ones have, that would take considered a return flow credit. Because, say, 100,000 acre feet in Nevada is basically equivalent to, I guess, 133,000. If you look at a total dilution or put back.
I'm not quite following the question.
That's average, I think, on about 4 people per household, or a little more than 3, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if that water were made, the 100,000 acre feet were made available to Southern Nevada?
Right, and then they give return flow credits for what their discharge is.
Correct.
And that would even be correct for this water that if it was produced or made available from Mexico, some conservation plant in Mexico.
This is assumed that Mexico would store the 100,000 acre feet, and Mexico in a future year would take that 100,000 acre feet. Excuse me. So in this analysis, it doesn't go to Southern Nevada Water Authority or any other U.S. user. One of the items that is still being discussed and needs to be discussed with Mexico is when Imperial Irrigation District or any other United States user creates ICS, there's a 5% cut to the system. Mexico has proposed that there be no cut to the system when Mexico creates it. So that's another item that will be discussed between Mexico and the U.S. What is an appropriate cut to the system? Mexico has agreed that it needs to share in the evaporation. If water is stored in Lake Mead, it's assumed that annually you would lose 3% of the water. That's consistent with what happens within the United States. The only reason I brought this to you is I knew that you were interested in salinity, and this is an initial look. It's not a broad study, an in-depth analysis. There has to be a lot more analysis regarding the salinity. But this is what it appears to be at first cut. Mr. President.
Is there more, or are you done?
I think that was the last one.
Okay. If there are any other questions from the board, we can open it up to the public. Okay, well, thank you.
This comment. Jerry, I want to thank you for coming down and making the presentation.
I thank you. It's a pleasure coming, and anytime that you want me to come, I will attempt to answer your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's come in the fall, right? Not in the summer.
All right, we'll move on to Energy General Matters.
Yes, Mr. Ajan.
I thought I would just try to give you a little preview of some of the items that are going to be coming forward to you for action over the next 30 to 90 days, because we do have quite a bit going on. And first of all, the finalization of the Integrated Resource Plan. You have reviewed that. ECAC has reviewed that. That will be finalized and put into written form. The final discussions and negotiations and preparation of the project, the El Centro 3 repowering, is wrapping up, and I think within the next 30 to 40 days we'll be bringing that back to you. The numbers are looking good. They're pretty much what we expected we would be getting in terms of our negotiations on the contracts. And we have some more preliminary work to do in terms of the necessary permits, but I suspect in about early March we'll be coming back to you with a recommendation on that project. As you know, we've done a series of management analyses. We are currently in the process of finalizing, or at least the team is in the process of finalizing the one on the Human Resources Department. That will be brought back to you in closed session. Administrative and support services are, we're having actually a kickoff meeting, I think, on tomorrow to start that project moving forward. We've recruited a couple of analysts from other departments, so we have a strong team put together, ready to go on that particular endeavor. We have had for the last 90 days or so a committee, internal committee of all departments working on a recommendation on smart meters. That is beginning to wrap up. We have a recommendation, and a report first, and a recommendation that will be coming forward again also in the next 30 to 60 days. Transmission cluster study and expansion plan is moving along very well. We'll be giving you an update on that again. Again, that is pretty much on schedule. And also, as well as the negotiations on geothermal and solar development. So we have quite a busy agenda over the next 30 to 90 days. And some of that, of course, will be covered because we're involved in specific negotiations. Will be in closed session, but for the most part, we'll be able to make public presentations on that.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Jay, I just want to say that you don't have to. Mr. Koch gave a very good presentation last night in La Quinta, the ECAC on the Integrated Resource Plan. So I thought that was well received by the committee.
All right.
No, he did a good job. He's a very good professor.
He is, and I'm glad that the ECAC could learn the amount of work that had went into that document. That was quite comprehensive.
Right. Well, it's quite impressive too.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
First and a second. All take a vote.
Yep.
All right. We will take a 5-minute break. Come back to action agenda. All right,
Yes.
we'll continue
Yes.
with our meeting and action agenda. Number 10, final follow-up to implementation recommendations made by internal auditing on various audits during 2008.
Mr. President, members of the board, this should be our final update on our recommendation. As of 2008, the time we issued our report, out of the 60 recommendations we made during the year, we have 54 recommendations implemented, and we have 6 that are in progress. Out of those 6, on page 47 on your agenda, number 10, it's addressing archiving, and this is part of the 2010 and 2011 budget and should be addressed then. And number 17, establish a document, an acceptable data age for restore and obtain approval from IID senior management is in progress. And actually it is part of the 2002 record retention program, and that might be revised at any time, and probably maybe when we're going to address archiving.
My office is working on a records retention program. We're going to involve audit as well as IT because there's a legal overlap on that.
Well, it's not just a legal overlap, but based on our regulatory compliance activities,
correct,
and a recent self-reporting that we had to do, we will be bringing back at least an abbreviated policy on record retention specific to SIPS documentation. So while we may not have a complete overarching policy for the entire district, we will at least have the forerunner of a policy within the next 60 days regarding documents and lifecycle management of information that we can use as the foundation for the rest of the district.
Good.
Number 21 on page 48 is the signed agreement with APS for the operation of the Auriaca plant, and as we had reports, it's still in progress, and it's it's pending execution. And if there's any more questions, maybe Mr. Ajayan can address them. The other recommendations are still pending. It's on page 50, recommendation number 51. Is part of the integrated resource plan of the Energy Department, and that is also self-recommendation, I might say, that is depending on the market and how the market is behave, that can be or cannot be used depending on feasibility. Number 52, consider bringing coral function in-house. It's in progress. 2 traders were hired to allow the day shift coverage of the corals activity, and the complete and it's going to be within 2 months. The staff that was hired should be trained and take it completely over. 3 additional traders still are required to completely take over the scheduling functions during the weekend and the evenings. And as soon as that's going to be done, this should be considered implemented. And number 53, which is still in progress, it's the same as number 51, and it is currently being reviewed internally for feasibility. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, on number 21, on the Yucca plant, that's been long pending. I mean, years back. When I say pending, maybe it wasn't pending, we just didn't have a signed agreement. Is there still an issue there? Or?
Yeah, we're still involved in negotiations on that. It really ties into the gas supply for the Yucca plant. I think that in the next 60 to 90 days we'll have that issue resolved. It has not been overlooked. It is simply something that has taken a great deal of time in negotiating carefully with Arizona Public Service. There are issues. If we went the way they wanted, we wouldn't have a very good deal. I think we're going to get our way, but it's going to take a little bit more time.
And that's probably was last time we had the same update. And
yeah,
internally
it's gotten more complex because there's been a lot of pipeline construction in that area, but I think the issue is beginning to be resolved.
Is there any risk factors involved with this?
No, right now, if we had an issue regarding supply, we still could go to financial hedges, which we have used in the past, that allowed us to keep the costs down. So we think there's minimal risk, at least over this period of time.
When can we expect the 2009 follow-up?
We are working on the 2009 follow-up, and we anticipate to bring it to the board. The first one, probably the second board meeting in March, but no later than the first board meeting in April of the recommendations made during 2009.
Good.
It appears there's been a lot of work done to get these all caught up.
There has.
There has been.
The 2009 list will be a short one, right?
2009 should be a much shorter list than we had for 2008.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You all did very good work. And with that, I move to acknowledge receipt of the internal auditor's report.
Second.
First and second, open up for discussion. No comments, please vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 11, adopt the position of support if amended on S-289, the Hoover Power Allocation Act of 2009.
And this relates to Mr. Ajayan and my meetings in Washington last week.
Yeah, I think we've briefed you in the past that Senate Bill 2891, House Bill 4349. Hoover allocations are coming up for reallocation 2017. This is really the bill is an attempt to preempt a parallel WAPA reallocation proceeding to lock in guaranteed supplies for existing contractors, of which we are not one. The existing contractors have agreed to what they call a 5% haircut, meaning they would take 5% less than they're currently getting, which would free up a little over 100 megawatts of power for reallocation to new contractors. The bill would provide some power for IID to apply for during the allocation proceeding. However, we are somewhat concerned about the failure of the participants to consult with us through SCAPA in terms of allowing us to contribute to the language. Our position in Washington is that we support the bill, but we think it does need some amendments to make it clearer that IID has some specific concerns. One is that we haven't received an allocation of Hoover in the past. They're one of, if not the only public entity that has not, although we do get Parker Davis power. We are, given our economic climate in Imperial Valley, as well as the fact is that we serve a number of Indian tribes who are in line to get some of these allocations. We'd like to be able to meet with the, designers or drafters of this bill to suggest some language to see if we can increase our chances of getting an allocation. Basically, the message we got in Washington, particularly from the California delegation, was that they really don't want to mess around with the 5%. We suggested initially go from 5 to 7%, freeing up more power. Their concern is that would mean more power going to other states other than California, and we can understand that concern. However, we do think that there is an openness to us providing some language that they would consider, so for inclusion, which I think would give us a better shot at getting an allocation. So we're going to give it a good attempt, and our recommendation is to support the legislation if amended, and we propose to get involved in providing some draft amendments for their consideration, if they will at least sit down and discuss it with us.
So, Mr. A, realistically, what are the odds of them incorporating language to provide power for the district?
But I think it's well, I think we got a good, and Dr. Brady was said in those meetings, I think we got a good reaction from the California delegation and others that said basically they should listen to you. They should at least sit down and meet with you. And we think that we're going to get those meetings. Whether they will actually include that language, I don't know. I think it's less than 50-50, but it is worth a try. Now, the current language does allow for us to have a chance at some power. From what we can calculate, there's probably less than 11 megawatts available for us to even apply for. How much of that we would get, we wouldn't know. But if this thing were to be opened up, I doubt we would get any more than that anyway. So we don't want, we think it's a good idea to have this proceeding and have this legislation go through, but we're going to try to influence the language on it. There seems to be, this is building up, has built up a great head of steam, and we are, there are not many entities that are standing in its path of it.
Okay.
When is this legislation coming up for, in front of the Senate or coming for approval?
We understand it, well, I don't know when it'll come up for approval, but hearings are starting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, on the House side, Senate hasn't, they didn't give any indication of when they're bringing it up, but on the House side, we talked to the senior staff of resources, and they were saying it could be as early as 2 weeks. So we're following that. Joe Rader, the Ferguson group, is working very closely with that committee staff. That's Napolitano's committee, the one that I testified in front of last week.
So this 11 megawatts would come from Pole D?
Yeah, that would be what they would call D-power. Now, there is a question we have about how that would be priced, because this freed up power being made available, the legislation requires that there's a payback of costs sunk in Hoover, sort of reclaiming the cost. It's not going to be at the same price that A power is the original allocation, and B is the 84 allocation. And we're not sure what that number is because we're in the process of evaluating the number. We still think it'll be very favorably priced, under 5 cents a kilowatt hour. We're probably in the 3 to 4 cent range, but it is not going to be as inexpensive as the original Hoover allocation.
What do we pay right now for the power that's generated on the All-American Canal?
Ooh.
I don't know. I don't. It's probably in the 5 to 6, because those are smaller units. They're
Probably
low
higher
head.
than that when you incorporate the falling water charge.
Well, I think the falling water charge is around 3 or 4 cents. When you incorporate the sunk costs, probably around 5 cents.
Probably more than that.
Don't you think we get something close to B, since we've been a member of SCAPA since 1980 and somehow got left out in 84?
Yeah, everybody asks me, why didn't you grab some in 84? And I basically say I have trouble figuring out what went on 5 years ago, let alone 25 years ago at IID. But And frankly, when that power was allocated, I was I was in Anaheim in the 90s, and I was one of those grabbing onto that power, and we got 40 megawatts of that power. And that was basically priced on the cost of the upgrading. Basically what they did was they upgraded the facilities at Hoover, and that generated some more power, and that was open to entities that hadn't been receiving the original Hoover power. Again, why IID wasn't in line for that, no one really knows. And that's priced around 2.5 cents, even though the Interior Department threw everything possible into the cost of that project, including a $100 million visitors center, which cost more than the Mirage Hotel when they built it. Even with that, that was still 2.5 or 3 cents a kilowatt hour.
It's a very nice facility.
I heard.
Yes.
Well, there are no further questions. Move to take a vote.
I move to support, if amended, S 2891, the Hoover Power Allocation Act of 2009.
I'll second it.
First and a second. Open for discussion.
Yeah, I would do whatever it takes to get us back into the line. Look like we missed out in '84. They just kept us out of the loop, what it looks like. So. Yep.
Well, that's really what happened, and we're disappointed in both SCAPA and others that worked on this legislation, basically because we weren't part of the Hoover team. They didn't see a necessity of running it by us until they were about ready to release it and file the legislation. However, I think we did make a very good impact in Washington. We didn't at any point say we opposed it. On the other hand, we did say we believed that we could contribute to the crafting of this, of these amendments. Pretty much everybody said, these things are in Washington not to fly through and get adopted as written. They do get amended as they go through the process. As much as some of its opponents want to fast track it, we think there will be an opportunity to make some comments. I don't give us a high chance of getting more than a few megawatts. I really don't, but I think it is worth the effort because
it is.
Yeah, it is definitely worth the effort.
Out of curiosity, how did this come to your attention?
Well, I believe that SCAPA, we started to see some material coming from SCAPA because it started to approach, once it came out of a SCAPA committee, the Hoover Committee, which we're not members of, it then approached the SCAPA board, and I guess we started to see it when it reached the board.
And we started to see letters of recommendation from different cities saying how all of the public power entities in Southern California support this. And it's like, wait a minute, this is the first time we've seen this. So that was really just a very short while ago. So anyway, we agree with the board. We're going to do whatever it takes to see if we can insert the right language that gives us a better shot at the megawatts.
Are you looking at 11 megawatts or less than that? Because that would be like 1% of our.
I'd be surprised if we got 11. I think there's 11 available for all of Southern California, and that would include Indian tribes. I would like to find some language. Our first attempt was to try to increase the haircut from 5% to 7%, which would free up about another 40 megawatts. Frankly, the California delegation, and specifically and very strongly Feinstein's office, basically said, no way, because if you go from 5 to 7, California as a whole will get less power. You may get some more, but California as a whole. And so we will adamantly fight that. We simply will not go along with you on that. And that's basically the message we got from all of the California delegations, most of the California delegations. Our next suggestion was, well, okay, if you don't want to do that, what about some specific language that will sort of open up some of the other power? Now, SCAPA has made the calculation of the 11 megawatts. When you read the legislation, it looks like there's more than that available. We get the message that it's been pre-committed to specific parties such as Indian tribes. And we're not sure how it can be pre-committed because it isn't in the legislation that way. And the way we read it, correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, it's like 2/3 of that power should be allocated by WAPA, as I understand. That would make about 60 or 70 megawatts. So if you take the worst case assumption, which is the 11, we wouldn't get all of that. But we're certainly going to try to make an attempt to see if we can get some of the rest of it and come up with some language which would at least give us some access to that. And I think that language might well be crafted around the fact that we serve a number of Indian tribes which seem to be getting priority in this legislation. At least that's kind of where I think our best efforts would be. And that approach toward trying to come up with some language that give us a better shot, I think got a much better reaction from the legislative groups that we met with.
All right. Please vote. Moving on to number 11. I'm sorry, 12.
And Mr. Jane has this as well.
That's 2899, which is Feinstein's proposal, the Senate bill, the Renewable Energy Incentive Act, which basically takes the existing Treasury grant program and does two things really. It extends the date from 2010 to 2012, and everybody who's in the renewable energy business wants to see that happen. Now, that particular program basically gives credits, tax credits. Feinstein's proposal would actually include giving direct grants of up to 30% to public power facilities as well. That gives us an additional option. We have been looking at doing public-private partnerships which are still valid because the private partner can get the tax credit. But this would open up the opportunity for us to make our own investment and get a grant rather than work through a tax credit. So we would recommend IID strongly support this bill.
Mr. President, I move that the board adopt the resolution in support of the legislation and forward a copy to the bill's principal author, Senator Feinstein.
I'll second it.
We have a first and second. Open for discussion. Please vote. All right. Moving along to letter in support of Local Building Industry Association Chapter Autonomy.
Mr. Swarthout.
Good afternoon, President and board members. I'm here on behalf of the Building Industry Association of Desert Chapter. As you can see in the backup, there's been a dispute going on for quite a while with the Building Industry Association of Southern California and its chapters. It has 6 chapters that sit under it, and Desert Chapter is one of those. Over the past couple of years, they've tried to do a strategic plan, and during that plan, the Southern California Association decided that it would be, being the parent, it would take over and become the corporate headquarters, and they would kind of disperse with all the outside boards that actually run the local agencies. The Desert Chapter was very upset with what was going on, and basically because of the economy, you know what's happening with the Building Industry Association. Southern California has had real money problems, and so they saw all the reserves in the different chapters. Riverside had $4.4 million in their reserve. Bali View, which is San Bernardino, had 3.5, and the Desert Chapter had 1.5 million in its reserves. They saw those reserves out there and decided that they wanted to go after those reserves for their own need. We felt very strongly about that money was collected locally and needed to be spent on local advocacy. Back in 2003, the Desert Chapter took on the Imperial Valley, and the current president of the board right now is Tom DeBose, a local person. He asked me to bring this to the board and ask for your support. We've received quite a few letters that are going back to the National Home Builders Association, which is the parent company to Southern California Building Industry Association. So we are appealing now to them to allow us to separate completely from SC and be our own building industry association. So we're looking for support from this board to take that back to
Mr.
DC.
President, I move to authorize the general manager to sign the attached letter.
I'll second that. I have a couple of questions. Pat, I talked to you about this last night.
Yes, sir.
You said they were going to take the $1.2 million. Did they also take the money from Riverside and the other guys too?
At this point, Riverside is folding into their chapter, and they will be a part of the whole association.
Yikes.
So yes, they ultimately, to back up a minute, in December, the BIA-SC board took a vote to dissolve the Desert Chapter. Currently, the Desert Chapter board is not supposed to be in existence, except that we have a lawsuit before the court in Indio right now stating that we are trying to separate from SC. So they tried to preempt the courts by saying this is not an existing chapter anymore. So we are now taking it to the NAHB right now.
They already took the $1.2 million or whatever.
No, that's still, there's precedent been set in several cases where we should be able to keep that money. They have not come in and tried to take it. They know that they really don't have standing there yet because of the lawsuit still pending.
I've got a question for legal counsel. Is there any possible conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest in this? That's being part of the organization, and then I know they contribute to different campaign funds.
Not based on what I know now. I could create a scenario where there could be, but I don't think so at this point.
Yeah, just what I was concerned about, if there was action taken and then within a certain time frame, would that?
And they came in and asked for something?
Or if they donated to a campaign or something, would that create a problem?
I don't think so, but again, I guess I could conceive of a scenario, but I'm not sure that this action would create that scenario.
Just to kind of reassure you, the Board of Supervisors has taken action, the same action, and there are a lot of corporate entities that have taken the same action. It's basically in support of resolving the issue between BIA-SC and BIA Desert Chapter.
That's also about
I don't think this has to do with the lawsuit.
Yeah, it's also about trying to have some local say about what's going on.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because I know the guys that belong to this are fairly active in the building industry and what's going on.
Right, and the real problem is we believe that we're not going to have local representation. It's all going to be over in Riverside and currently the Riverside Board oversees the Desert Chapter, and we've yet to see them come to any of the meetings at all. So,
yeah. Well, I support the local autonomy. I just want to make sure there's no.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Please vote.
Thank you.
Moving on to finance.
Our last item.
Our last item, number 14, partial defeasance of 2004 certificates of participation related to the Western Farmlands purchase.
Yes, I've previously been in front of the board twice trying to get authorization to move forward with the either a cash defeasance or a direct purchase or a combination thereof of the 2027 term bond that's out of the 2004 taxable revenue certificates. Western Farmlands is what they're better known as. If the board was to move forward with this, our intent would be to defease that term bond, which through 2019 would reduce the debt service payment about $1.5 million a year, and then it would increase from there through 2027. The decrease in debt service would be about $4.3 million.
And the recommendation is to either or a defeasance purchase or a combination of. depending upon
Do-
what's most financially
Would you
advantageous.
explain the difference between what you mean by partial defeasance or direct purchase?
Sure. A direct purchase would be if we could get the current holders of the bond. We think there are just 2 holders. If we could get them to sell those bonds to us at a price less than it would cost us to do a legal defeasance. Legal defeasance would be where we would put X amount of money into an escrow, and then as time came by, those escrow funds would pay off the debt service. If we can negotiate with the bondholders to come in lower than that amount, then we would probably do it.
There may be a willingness on their part to sell for less than par?
No, there may be a willingness on their part to sell, but it won't be for less than par. They're fully aware that we have defeased bonds in the past, that we may defease bonds in the future, and if we do defease the bonds, it makes the underlying value of their bonds more valuable. So they will not be offering below par. There will be a premium we'll have to pay. But what we're trying to do is obviously is to beat the cash defeasance number. And if we can, then we'll more than likely do it.
All of our trust land sales money has been used for defeasance of the bond, is that correct?
Well, it's yes, it's been used to pay debt service and some other expenses, I think. But principally, it's been used to pay debt principal and interest on the bonds. Yeah.
Dr. Broken, you ran through a couple different scenarios, a smaller partial defeasance. I see your no defeasance numbers. You ran some of those different scenarios. This is the best, or either or direct purchase is the best way to go?
Yeah. Yes. It's best, in our opinion, it's best to defease those bonds or get them off our books, and whether it's by a direct purchase or cash defeasance, we're just going to go with whichever method or combination thereof gives the district the best deal. It's our opinion that although we have $30-some-odd million still left in the Western Farmlands account, we're earning a minimal amount of money on that because of the interest rates that are currently being paid. You know, as an example, on page 61, you know, a 2-year Treasury note is paying less than 1%, and a 5-year note is, I think, this was a few weeks back, it was about 2.5%. I think it's even lower than that now, and we're paying close to 6% interest. So we think it's better to get the debt off our books, lower our debt service, increase our debt service coverage ratios. That makes us look better when we meet with the rating agencies.
Greg, you mentioned that the Western Farmlands proceeds will be the primary source. What would be the other source?
It would be the existing reserves that the water department has, and we would be using what we consider money to be from the water transfer. We could use part of the $6 million that we recently received as settlement for the 8 and 9 price with San Diego County Water Authority, if we need to. We think we'll need to use a little more than what we have in the Western Farmlands account, but we're not sure we're going to have to use too much more than that.
Would that have any effect on the rates? Using those?
Excuse me. No, we're just using reserves to pay these off, to pay these bonds off. So there will be no impact on rates as a result of that.
These funds here in the Western Farms land are unrestricted, that's correct?
Yes, they are unrestricted.
I'd like to see going forward that we get these funds restricted for this defeasance purposes. Any way to bring that about, something like that, forward?
We can do that, sure.
We can do that.
Because we do get some revenues from rent. Is that capable of running the operations, administrative or what have you?
Excluding debt service, yes. The leases we get are enough to pay the expenses associated with that land, but they're not great enough to pay the debt service associated with that land.
Mr. President?
Yeah, no, I'm going to make a motion that we approve a resolution authorizing the partial defeasance or direct purchase of the 2004 taxable revenue certificates of participation maturing on July the 1st,
Second.
2027, pertinent agreements.
Second.
We got a first and a second. Open up for discussion.
Would your motion include bringing forth policy to set this up as a restricted fund?
Well, I have no problem with that. I mean, I've always been under the assumption that nobody's touching that money. Money goes to pay the bonds back.
Well, that's what I thought too.
That's the way it's supposed to be. So, but let's pass this. You want to make another motion? That's fine with me. Get this one behind us.
I just think at any time we can pay off debt, I think we should take that opportunity. Thank you. Please vote. All right.
Do I need to make a motion that we bring policy back to make these restricted funds for the purpose of defeasance and operations?
I'll second the motion.
All, please vote. All right. This meeting is adjourned. See you at 5.